Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have another Rutgers grad on the show today, and wait do you find out more about this young lady. But I'm going to start academically first, and her accolades are incredible. It's a laundry list, but I'm going to shorten it just for time. Her academic achievements, I always love to start with that first. Graduated from Rutgers with honors, the President's Award, awarded for carrying a 4.0 GPA. I don't know how you do that as an athlete. The
Oh,
All
whoa,
Eagle.
whoa, whoa, whoa. A 4.0 GPA. That was not me.
Well, it's what it says on your academic record.
Where's that at?
I don't know. You got to check it out, right? Athletic achievement, four-time letter winner, gymnast, team captain, loved the
Yeah.
leadership. The Noble Award, recognized as the team's standout gymnast based on their athletic performance, consistency, sportsmanship, and dedication. But this is really cool. Gets out of school, gets into broadcasting. Emmy Award-winning sports broadcaster, and I think that's your trophy right behind you on the screen
There it
for those that
is.
are on YouTube.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
National Award-winning ESPN and SEC network reporter. National Sports Media Association of Alabama's Sportscaster of the Year. Best Sports Anchor by the Alabama Associated Press. The Abby Award winner for the Sports Anchor of the Year.
Man.
You got a lot, right? And now this is awesome. Author of the book Shatter Proof.
Ah.
And I can't wait to dive into that. Board member of the Addiction Prevention Coalition in Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome to the show, Lauren Sisler.
Hey, I appreciate it. So we have to make a correction or an addition. Let's call it an
Oh,
addition. I'm
okay.
also now on the board of directors for the Rutgers Foundation.
Nice. All
Yeah,
right.
I got to add that in there. I'm very honored for that. I
Yeah.
just got voted in, and my first meeting with them was this past September, and so
Beautiful.
excited to be on the charge. Obviously a new president at the helm as well as a new
Yep.
athletics director, and just really excited to be joining, this group of incredible, extraordinary individuals that are coming together to just
Yeah.
make Rutgers continue to find success and
Yeah.
great and all the things. And I also real quick want to go back to that 4.0. I'm wondering
May,
because I did not graduate with a 4.0. However, as I was
maybe one
working my way up,
semester you had a 4.0?
I'm thinking that might be it. It's got to be because
Okay.
I will say this, like, we'll get into my story, but like I got close to flunking out because of, there was a lot of
Yeah.
circumstances
Yeah.
and we'll get into my story obviously,
Right.
but
We'll
there was a
keep it
there was
though.
a point in time where I didn't know that I'd even like make it to graduation. But I did work my tail off. And so to get my GPA back up, I think that there were uh I guess there was maybe a semester into or
Hey,
two.
listen, if you can get one semester at 4.0, that's pretty damn
Heck
good.
yeah, I know.
You know
I'm
what I
proud of
mean?
that.
I
I'll
never
take
had
that.
one. I never had it.
I mean, it's for the record. It's on the record there, so I'll
Yeah.
take it.
It's on the record. We'll take it. Well, Lauren, I got a ton of questions to ask you. But
Okay.
before I get into that, just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself for those who might not know.
I appreciate it. And hey, y'all, I'm just battling whatever this thing is going around right now. So, you have
We're
to.
all coughing.
I
We're
know.
good.
I'm just like, what in the world is this? I
Yeah.
guess it's that time of year. I dodged it during football season somehow, but I'm on the tail end of this thing, but it's like the gift that keeps giving. I tell you,
Yeah.
it's been like 3 weeks of this.
Brutal.
But grateful for this and just you kind of read all the accolades there. I mean, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
appreciate
And
that.
there's a
But
lot more. You have a lot more, but I had to shorten it for essence of time.
oh my gosh. Well, I need you to send me wherever this is listed because I'm like, wow. Like
Okay.
that's kind of impressive. I didn't even know all those things existed or, maybe they've
Yeah.
just escaped my memory a little bit over time as I've gotten older. But, just grateful to be here and this opportunity kind of to lean in with you, have this conversation. But um, am I just kind of giving you a little low level introduction
Yeah.
of who I am?
Yeah. For now.
Okay.
Then I'll dig deep.
Hi, I'm Lauren Sisler. No, uh, I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. Obviously, my connection to Rutgers is very strong. Graduated in 2006, from Rutgers, was a gymnast my whole life. Like that really became my dream was to pursue a college scholarship in gymnastics. And so, certainly grateful for that. opportunity, and Rutgers really became a foundation for me and became home for me. But prior to that, it was uh, me, my mom, my dad, my brother, living in Roanoke, Virginia, living it up. And, we were a sports family. So sports has always kind of been in the blood. But I'll be honest with you, there was a point in my time in my life that I actually, growing up, wanted to be a sports doctor. I actually wanted to pursue
Really?
sports medicine. And, as life would have it and all the challenges that I faced while at Rutgers, that didn't pan out for me. My GPA did slip quite a bit. And so it was like, all right, where are we going to go now? What direction? And so one of my teammates, actually, Dawn, uh, basically said, "Hey, Laurie, why don't you join me over here in sports broadcasting?" And so that's kind of how that dream was born. And so I was kind of following alongside of a teammate that,
Now, were you always a talker back then too? Like a good
oh,
talker?
always
Yeah.
a talker, like
Yeah.
couldn't shut me up, right?
All right.
Always a talker and definitely like a performer. But that's
Okay.
gymnastics, right? Gymnastics is
Yeah.
such a performance-based sport and
Yep.
really an individual sport. So, I think I always kind of had a love for that performance piece. And
Yeah.
so it just felt like a good fit. And so, made the switch and here I am, still kind of living out this dream, doing this ESPN thing, mostly covering college football, which is awesome.
Love it.
Love covering college football. And then I do some gymnastics coverage as well, which is always a lot of fun to get back in the arena. Of
Yeah.
course, my days of competing and flipping around are gone. I took my son, who's 2.5 years old, to the trampoline park with my husband a couple weekends ago. And let me tell you,
Oh yeah.
your body just,
Says
it's,
no.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah. Your
okay,
brain's like, I could keep doing this, but you try once and your body's like, don't do that again.
don't do it again. I
Yeah.
know. And it's
Yeah.
almost like it's a grief process in a way. I'm kind of
Yeah.
like grieving the fact that, like,
Yeah.
I can't jump a million miles in the sky and, whip my leg up and
Yeah.
do all the things.
How
And
about your equilibrium? How is that?
oh, the
Right?
worst.
Yeah.
I think about this. I'm a thrill person. I love like thrill rides. I always grew up loving roller coasters. I'd get my
Yep.
dad on roller coasters with me a lot, my brother. And it's wild because even now, like I get on one ride and all of a sudden I'm
Oh
like,
yeah. You get
oh.
sick. Yeah.
Now, I will say I've always been someone that gets motion sickness like in the car. So I used to commute over an hour each way to gymnastics practice. And when I would commute, a lot of times I would commute, we would carpool. I would carpool with another gymnast that lived in the same area. And, she'd sit back in the back seat doing her homework. And I'm over here like I can't even touch it because it would
Yeah.
just make me, ugh.
Yeah.
So it's just funny how I could spin around
Yeah.
in a
Like
million
how could
different
you yeah, how does
directions.
that happen? How do you all the spinning you were doing and you got car
Yeah.
sick?
And I get car sick. I know. And then, of course, as I've gotten older, I did literally a backflip at the trampoline park. And I got off the trampoline and I told my husband, I said, "Ooh, I don't know about this." Like, ugh,
You still get car sick?
I do.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I
God.
mean, it's one of those things that, like, I can't really get on my cell phone a ton. Even if I'm in the front seat, I can do a little bit more in the front seat, but back seat, like, I can't do any
Yeah.
of that.
How about on
Oh,
the plane?
I've had to learn to condition myself. I have to be careful though, because like you said, sometimes with that, takeoff
Yeah.
and landing, you can definitely feel it, a little turbulence. But that's sometimes my most productive time when I get on a plane, because usually I'm connecting. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, so I'm always connecting somewhere, unless I'm
Yeah.
going to a major airport like, a team in Texas or whatever. But typically I'm connecting somewhere and then flying out to whatever destination for my game. And that is like primo time for me to get my computer out and get work done.
Yeah.
Preparation is key and success. And so, I get that out and spend that 2 hours, 3 hours up in the air doing that kind of work. And so I have to kind of muscle through it a little bit
Yeah. You
sometimes
got to
if I'm
fight
not
through it.
feeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go backwards a little bit. You know, you said Roanoke, Virginia is where you grew up.
Yep.
So how did you find Rutgers or did they find you?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I found them. Actually, how it all came to fruition was I had been sending my recruiting tapes out all over the country. And I always like to underscore tapes, VHS
Yeah.
tapes,
Yeah. Yeah.
VCR, my friends. Like
I
this
had
was
reel
not,
to reel. Mines were reel to reel. So it's even worse.
wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's wild. Like I'm like, oh my gosh. Like
Yeah.
fossilistic times here. But my one of the girls that also was a competitor at the club gym that I used to train at, she had actually applied to and was being recruited by Rutgers. And so Rutgers was really never on my radar. But, as we started sending my recruiting tape out, it was like, okay, you kind of got to cast that net pretty wide. There were schools that I was definitely interested in and really wanted a shot at. But with some injuries and different things like that, that window started to shrink. And it was kind of like, all right, we're going to have to think outside the box here. And, I might not be able to go to one of my top choices. And so Rutgers kind of landed on the radar. And, honestly, I didn't know anything about it, but it was a place that I fell in love with. Like, I went and visited the campus and a little bit of a culture shock. Yes, I
Yep.
am from
Yep.
the South, y'all. Okay.
Mm.
Could you tell?
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely a culture shock, but kind of in the best way. It really forced me and encouraged me to spread my wings and fly and get out there in the world and see the world from a different lens. And so I am grateful for that, and certainly grateful for the opportunity that Rutgers afforded me.
Yeah. So you show up there and you end up playing a sport that whenever I talk to somebody who's in the gymnastics world, it's always about the perfect 10, right? And like, how do you handle that as a gymnast? As a young woman, 18, 19 years old, and everything's about perfection. Like, how do you handle that? And then the other question I have, and this is kind of part two, is I know there's the body image thing, right? How do we stay skinny? How do we stay thin? How do we stay light? Uniforms. Like, how do you handle all that as a young 18-year-old kid?
Man, I'll tell you, I've actually thought about this a lot because I definitely am in a phase of my life at 41 years old now of like kind of deep diving into like the why.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in therapy. Love my therapist. And it's not so much like, hey, let's fix what's happening now. Let's like fix this problem. Let's,
Yeah.
get through it. Sometimes it's really doing a deep dive and digging deep into the why. Like,
Yeah.
why do I struggle with certain things? Even in communication with different things, like why am I such a people pleaser? Like why am I so fearful of abandonment, right? And a lot of that does, I think tie back to my story of losing both of my parents the way that I did when I was in college. There's just a lot of those factors, and I love exploring that. Like I'm in that kind of exploration mode now.
Yeah.
So I really have been exploring that question you just asked about the perfect 10 because I do think in so many ways, my life has been built on that idea of perfection because there's really no other sport when you
No.
think about it. First of all, gymnastics is very subjective, right? You have a
Yeah.
judge judging you on
Yeah.
your performances. And even the Olympic level, there is no perfect 10 anymore, right? They actually did away with that. At the college level, there's still in the club level, there's still
Okay.
the perfect 10.
So
But
I didn't know they got rid of it in the Olympics. So what's the best score now? Nine
the
nine?
elite, there is no such thing. There's no best score. There's no limitation. So what it is now you have basically your base score is based on your difficulty and then your execution.
Mm,
But there's with the perfect 10, everyone starts at a perfect 10. Of course, if you have the difficulty, some people like might have a vault that's a 9-9, so they would
yeah.
start from a 9-9. But the idea is to have a 10-0 start value,
Right.
and then you just deduct from there.
Yeah.
Whereas now it is everything's addition when it comes to the skill, right?
Yeah.
So every skill that you do adds value,
So they're accumulating points.
accumulating points, and then execution is taking it away. So it's just this
Yeah.
kind of teeter totter. So it's a little bit more challenging for those spectators at home, because I think gymnastics has always been such a prominent Olympic sport. People love tuning into gymnastics that have maybe no connection to it, but the Olympics always brought such a flair for it. So, um, I think it just comes back to that idea of the perfect 10, you know, basing a lot of my life and what I do on that perfection, right? I definitely feel like it feeds into, I'm a people pleaser. I want to, make everyone happy. I don't want conflict. I want, everybody to feel as strongly and as animated and as excited as I am when it comes to things, right? But I have to limit my expectations, and it's something I've had to work with my therapist, because it's even my husband. Like, I might get really excited about this one thing, and he might just be like, "Eh," and I have to be okay with that, right?
He didn't seem too excited about the clothes the other day
The what?
when you went clothes shopping.
Oh yeah, did you see that video?
Yeah,
Right? I
yeah.
know. I was very fired up about
You were
that.
excited. He didn't seem too excited.
Well, he was excited at the end when he found out that I bought him all those clothes for Valentine's Day.
There you go.
So his excitement did change a little. But it is funny, because I think that I've been wired to kind of operate in that mindset. And I've had to break down some of that how I've been conditioned to operate in life. I've had
Yeah.
to break that down. And then you add that other element that you mentioned, being a female, body image.
Yep.
So I will say this, growing up, I think I was always very much supported with my coaches. I come from a club gym that I think, my coach was amazing. I love Coach Lisa. She was hard though. But I responded well to hard coaching. There's some kids that don't like to be
Yeah,
cussed
they
at. They
crumble.
don't like to
Yep.
be. She got after it, and she got after me, but I responded to that. And so she knew how to coach me, and she knew how to coach me well. And so I think
Good.
that everybody's coached differently. And I think that it's different for everybody. But I will say that I never ran into that buzzsaw of the body image. I will say, later in high school, obviously, as I started to develop as a woman, obviously it was trying to figure out like how to manage that, right? Because it's different. You have to,
Yeah.
your nutrition changes, like your body, I mean, it's the law of physics. Like everything
Yeah.
just changes. And for me, as I was developing into, a young woman, I had to battle that. And more than anything, the growth spurt that I hit. Because, oh, by the way, y'all, I am 5'9". Like that is
Are you
way too
that
tall to
tall?
be a gymnast. Way
Wow.
too tall. Yeah,
Now, how tall were you?
put
How
that
tall
on
were you?
put that on that list, whatever that
I'm
list
gonna.
is you have. 5'9" gymnast. Yes.
So how tall were you in college? Did you have a
So
spurt there?
well, yes. So I started at 5'7", and then I grew 2 inches, which is unheard of for women. Usually women, we grow, we hit our growth spurt much earlier and
Yep.
kind of level off. My
Yep.
doctor, I had a lot of back problems. My doctor was like, "Oh, your rings are almost fused in your back. You're pretty much done growing." Boss. So, I ended up growing 2 more inches while I was in college. And so having to battle that, and I think that was probably a lot of the issues I had. I had a fractured femur. I was dealing with a lot
Ooh.
of back issues. So there were a lot of setbacks in that sense. And so it was like, all right, we're not going to do vault because I was terrible at that apparatus. Ended up, deciding to pull myself out of the balance beam rotation, and we just focused on floor and bars because those became like my two best events, and the two events I was really recruited for. So,
Right.
but going back to the body dysmorphia thing, it can be challenging, especially in a sport where, like, yeah, you're frumping around in a leotard where everybody's watching you, like,
Yeah.
and every line matters, every part of your physique, and
Yeah.
I obviously wasn't a petite gymnast. I was what they called, you'll laugh at this, and this kind of comes full circle to how things have changed, but they called me skinny fat. I was literally skinny fat. So what does that mean? It
Yeah,
means
what's that mean?
that I looked skinny on the outside. I looked skinny. I was very lanky, like just lanky, right?
Yeah.
Long and lanky. But the fat piece of it was my muscle to fat ratio was not good for a gymnast. So even though my body fat probably was around, like, at the time, like 14%, which is very low for a
Yep.
female,
Yep.
like in the gymnastics world, that's kind of, ooh, that's not great. So it was
Where
hard
would
for
they
me to
want
build
you?
muscle.
What are the gymnasts? What do they want you at body fat
I'd
wise?
be curious. I'd actually love to have that conversation with, and maybe it's not with the way culture is today.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't, maybe it's something they don't even address, because there has been so many negative headlines that have come out in the gymnastics
Yeah.
world with the Crowleys, and
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that has transpired with the sexual abuse and the things like that have put a bad name on gymnastics, the sport in
Yeah.
and of itself. And so I'd be curious actually to know. And so you've actually spawned a little thought and question,
There you go.
to go back to my folks at Rutgers and ask kind of how they handle that, because I would be curious to know how they address that, because there is, I mean, it like anything else, because here's the bottom line. Let's call a spade a spade. If you're a football player, they have no problem saying, "Hey, you need to add 20 pounds," or, "Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, you need to shred 30 pounds if you're going to play this
Yeah.
position and do it well."
Right.
They have no problem doing that. But hey, let me put this out there, okay? This is such an interesting conversation, but um, it was funny. I went to an Alabama gymnastics meet with my husband. So I was honored as like I did like the first cartwheel out on the
Yeah.
floor, honored at this particular meet. It was an Alabama Oklahoma meet last year. And it was funny because this sweet girl came up to me and gave me a big hug. And I had spoken with the team. So I'd spent some time with them. And so,
Yeah.
she'd just come to give me a hug. Oh, it's so great to see you, whatever. And as she kind of skips off to go, finish warm-ups, my husband said, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "How tall is she and how much does she weigh?" So he immediately went to the roster to see what her stats were because
Yeah.
that's the roster has your stats,
It's got your weight on there too.
not for females. So there you go,
Yeah.
right? So that was interesting because in his mind he just thought, "Oh yeah, her height and weight will be listed
Yeah.
on her bio, but not for females." And
Yeah.
so females, that they will actually I'd be curious. I have to go look and see if the height is listed on the rosters, but definitely not the weight. And so, that right in and of itself, once again, is,
Yeah.
just the disparity between female and male sports, athletics is that, it's definitely looked at very differently.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a young woman on the show probably last year who was a rower, and they posted the weights of the girls on the board in the locker room and said your weight can't be above this. And if it is, there was a problem. And they just made that public. And she said that we would go into the locker room like petrified of gaining a pound,
Yeah.
because there'd be punishment for it.
Well, and I imagine there's probably a strategy piece of that, and like in wrestling, right? You have
Yeah.
to hit your weight class.
Yeah.
And then obviously with like football and stuff like that, if you're going to play a particular position,
Yeah.
there's, there's a health element, a safety element too, you can't be a string bean over there playing linebacker.
No.
Um,
No.
but that is interesting. And I can't imagine that being a point of contention. We joked about it and I kind of thought it was funny back in college, like, "Oh, Lauren, you're
Yeah.
skinny fat." I think it's funny, but I do think that, now the way things are viewed, you can't, things have to be addressed a little bit
Differently.
differently now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think that I'm just fortunate that I always had the love and support and never really felt body shamed
Right.
or, and I think some of that was my own mindset of like, "I'm gonna eat this cheeseburger. I'm gonna eat this cheeseburger,"
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
It's your own confidence level. You brought the confidence,
Yeah.
but I
And
think you're
don't get me
right.
wrong. Like I sit here and say, "Oh, even nowadays at 41, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
calories don't burn the same way they did
No.
back then,
No.
right?"
They definitely don't. But
Gosh.
I think what you said is so true is that, you know, 40 years ago, nobody cared about telling people what to do.
Right.
And then as time has evolved over the last 10, 20, 30 years, you know, society is dictating more and more of what is allowed and not allowed and how we have to make sure everything's okay before you do it,
Yeah.
and I think that
Uh-huh.
that affects the athletes, and it affects everybody. And now I think the athletes today, my opinion, are coddled. They can't practice too much. They can't do this too much. They can't do that too much, which I get it for their health and for safety. But I think now it's kind of getting crazy.
Hey, let me tell you, things have changed a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, just the way things are done and the way things are managed. And again, I told you, I love being coached hard. My
yeah.
coach would get in my face. Sometimes a cuss word would come out here and there. Get your
It
butt
would
back up on
drive
the
you. It
beam.
would drive you to be better.
I'm like, heck yeah,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
go.
Let's go.
You know, um, and I think too. It's interesting because I will say I think there is that disparity between male and female sports as well. Because how many locker rooms have you heard, behind the scenes, or at least I have, and sometimes you'll get a snippet from the ESPN broadcast where they'll have to like bleep out like
Oh yeah,
certain things that are said because like a coach will get in there and really just give it to them.
like Rick
And
Pitino. You see his posts,
yeah,
his videos. Whew,
yeah,
man.
like, and again, to each its own.
Yep.
But I think that was something too. And I'll say this, the way I was coached a certain way, um, but I think a part of that, the foundation came from my parents. And I'll say
Right.
this because just being truthful, I definitely hit like most teenagers, got into a little bratty phase where, you're going to talk to me like that, I'm going to talk back, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I was having trouble doing a skill, like really struggling doing a skill. I was just balking on it mentally. It was just, I was not connecting for me. And I remember just getting so upset and so frustrated. And my coach she was on me, like get up there and do it. You got to do it. You got to get past this. Go, go, go. And I remember like talking back to her and really, we got into a pretty big spat. And I remember going home and my parents, more so my mom, especially kind of leading the charge on this. She said, Lauren, you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call Coach Lisa and you're going to apologize and you're going to have a conversation with her, an adult conversation, a civil conversation, and you're going to apologize for, the way that you've acted. I've seen other parents basically go to the coach and say, don't ever talk to my child like that. Don't act
Yeah.
like that. So I've seen both sides of it. But
Yep.
my parents basically said, you're going to fight your own battle here. You created this. You acted out of hand. You spoke back to your coach in a way that you shouldn't have, that was disrespectful, and you're going to fix this. And that was a lesson that I learned at an earlier age that, maybe at the time I was pouting and I was like, I
Yep.
can't believe I have to do this. But now looking back, I'm like, that was a huge foundation for me is that,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to learn to fight your own battles and that sometimes you have to learn there are consequences and that you have to be the bigger person to step up and,
Yep.
and make things right when, you know,
Right.
maybe you stepped out of line and you did something you shouldn't have. Or sometimes you just got to be the bigger person, even if
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're in the wrong.
Yep.
Sometimes you just
Do
got
it.
to step up to the
But
plate and
how
say,
did your coach handle that when you called him?
she was great. I think that honestly strengthened our relationship. Of course, just I literally called her like at home and said, I'm really sorry. And I can't remember the specifics of the
Yeah.
conversation other than I just remember it being like it just bridged the gap
Yeah.
and in so many ways like strengthened our relationship. And
Yep.
then that strengthened our relationship, I think, even more in the events that would transpire of losing both of my parents. And even though I was going to Rutgers and out of that gym, I would still go back home and train during the summers, right? And spend a lot of time with her. But she's like a second mom to me. And honestly, even when my parents were here, I would travel with her a lot because my parents financially, it didn't make sense financially for them to get on a plane and fly all the way to Hawaii. So, as a family, so, you know, uh, basically I flew and stayed with my coach or
Yeah.
stayed with someone else. And so, I think it's just it was a big lesson that I didn't quite comprehend back then. And now it's
Yeah. Oh, it's
definitely.
huge. And you're still tight with her now?
Oh yeah. We're like, I mean, she's like my mom. It's like when I go back home to Virginia, because I live in Alabama now. So it's about 8 hours for me to go back
Yep.
home. My family's there, my aunt and uncle, they're like my parents now and Mason's grandparents. So I go back and visit them, as much as I can. But when I go back home, like one of the first calls I make, hey, I'm coming in town. Let's get together. Let's hang out, let's spend time together. I spent a lot of time with her two sons, like,
That's great.
that was family.
She's family now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, so I need to ask you an uncomfortable question, and I know you talk about this a lot, but I don't think anybody who's listening right now knows you had a tough issue in college with your losing your parents. And your book Shatter Proof, which we're going to get into in a second, is kind of all about that. This is a silly question, but how does a young 20, well, how old were you? 22?
18.
18. All right. How does an 18-year-old young woman who's hundreds of miles away from home handle that?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because looking back on that, I've had so many people say, like, I just don't know the depths of what you walk through and how you overcame that. And sometimes I don't even think I know, like,
Yeah.
just. Like, all right, I think it's this idea, this mentality, you get knocked down, you get back up, you keep going. And I think gymnastics taught me a lot of that. Like I was really good at compartmentalizing things. You fall down, you get back up, next routine, next, new day, new
Yeah.
routine, new challenge. So I think in a lot of ways I was conditioned that way, but there were so many opportunities for me to just fall through the cracks and
Oh
like
my God.
wave the white
I
flag
can
and
only
say I'm
imagine.
done. Um, but a very challenging situation. And so for those that don't know the story, as a freshman at Rutgers, I received a phone call from my dad to let me know that my mom had died, and it was in the middle of the night, freshman year, second semester. And the call came as a huge shock because I had just talked to my parents on the phone hours before. Everything seemed fine. Life was good. Like we're good. And then he said, get on the next plane. You can. I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And unfortunately, he didn't show up that day. And he too had passed away within 5 hours of my mom. And really, it was such a challenging experience because there I am losing my two best friends, the two people that I love more than anything in this world within hours of each other. And
Yeah.
then the days that would pass, the days that would follow, and the challenges that would come from those, picking up the pieces, myself and my brother, trying to figure out what to do next. But then the other layer to that was the shame that came with it. And the
Yeah.
shame because people would ask me, of course, well, what happened to your parents? And for years, Jeff, I couldn't tell people the truth. I couldn't tell
Yeah.
people the truth. I couldn't acknowledge a truth. I didn't even know the truth because I refused to see the truth
Yeah.
for years because I was so ashamed and so fearful of what people would think if they knew that my parents died of prescription drug overdoses.
Mm.
So both my parents were going to pain management doctor. Mom had degenerative disc disease. Dad had chronic back pain. His, struggle with PTSD from his service in the military. And really, my parents just did a good job of putting a mask on. Hey, we're
Yeah.
fine. We're good. Life is good. And underneath it all, they were fighting this silent battle. And I think that was, the shame they were feeling and experiencing because of what they were walking through.
Yeah. Now, were you
I,
able to see that even though they were hiding it?
it's interesting. Hindsight's always 2020,
Yeah.
right? When okay, so my dad was an alcoholic, I'll say that. And when I was 10 years old, like I knew he had a drinking problem. But what does that mean as a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh, like I would hear my mom, hey, go back, you got to get back to your A meetings. And then again, compartmentalize it. Oh, he relapsed. Again, 10-year-old me doesn't know what that even
Yeah.
means. He relapsed. Oh, he's doing great now. 6 months would go by and he wouldn't touch a drink of alcohol and things were great. And then it would happen again and he'd go on a weekend bender. But I'd box it up, put it on a shelf, forget about it, move on, right? And
Yeah.
um so there was that component of it when I was younger. But then when it came to the prescription drugs, like I knew my parents were going to a pain management doctor, like, but I didn't recognize like opening the pill cabinet in the kitchen where they kept a lot of their pills, their daily regimen. Like I wasn't looking at that being like, oh, this is out of control. To me, I was
Yeah.
like, they're all
It's
prescribed
normal.
to them. They're
Yeah.
all legal. Mom's name's on them, dad's name's on them. But what I didn't realize is like they're getting a 90-day supply of Oxycontin shipped to them in the mail on repeat.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. It was Oxycontin. And then eventually that wasn't working for my mom. So she was then prescribed fentanyl. And that's kind of when things really started to unravel. And ultimately, that's what took their lives.
Well, that's a tough one, you know. So how did your teammates rally around you?
Oh, I'll tell you this. Just as the story goes, you kind of talk about did Rutgers, ooh, kind of gets me emotional. Um, did you find Rutgers or did Rutgers find you? And maybe in some ways, I think maybe Rutgers found me. And as a woman of faith, I don't think there's coincidence that I was, it was a gift to be able to get that scholarship, last scholarship standing, took, took the reins, went after it. Was it my first choice? No, but it ended up being the best choice because The support system that I had at Rutgers, ugh. I mean, I will forever be indebted to Rutgers and my family there, my coaches, my teammates, just for the love and support they showed me. And here's the thing, Jeff, it wasn't just, oh, we're going to love you through this. There was also tough love moments that transpired because I'll tell you this, I was not always the most pleasurable person to deal with. I was on the outside, I was bubbly, Lauren, me, energy all the time.
Yeah.
But then there were moments of doubt and grief would creep in, and I would be sitting in the corner of the gym just bawling my eyes out, upset that I, just couldn't get my head and mind wrapped around this tragic thing that had happened. I was doing everything I could to escape the reality of it all. And um, I think through it all, it was easy because for a while it was like, oh, we're just gonna love her through this. Like her parents died, right? And in my mind, it's like, I kind of have this like automatic hall pass. Like if things aren't going well, it's like, I've got this thing that I'm dealing with, so people will accept it and be okay with it. But eventually, like it wasn't okay because, oh, by the way, your grades are slipping, Lauren. You're
Mm.
gonna lose your scholarship. And so, my gymnastics coach really kind of had to sit me down and have that tough conversation and say, hey, we love you. We're here for you. But the bottom line is, Lauren, like, we can't do this for you. Like, you have to make the commitment. We've got all these resources, but until you make the commitment to stand tall and to walk through this and to do this, nobody else can do it for you.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, like, okay, I've got to take control, right? We can't always control what happens to us. We can't control life circumstances. We can't control the tragedies, but we can control our response to them. And so that for me
Yeah.
was big is regaining control. And it didn't happen overnight. It was baby
No.
steps, one foot in front of the other. But that support system at Rutgers, and I think that's why I have, I mentioned at the top of the show, like getting elected onto the board of directors for the Rutgers Foundation. Talk about a full circle moment.
Yeah.
I've bounced around. I have not been back in Jersey a ton since graduating. I don't live close by, so it's not like, oh, and then not to mention, it's not like I can just go to every football game because, by the way, I have a job and I'm
Yeah.
traveling to another
Yeah.
football game, so I
Yeah.
can't necessarily do that. But I, just the honor of being just connected to the Rutgers family
Yeah.
in the way that, I feel like I've always had a strong, deep connection with them, but just getting kind of pulled back into it now. Oh, I don't want to say it, but almost 20 years
Yeah.
later. I
Yeah.
graduated 20 years ago, Jeff. Like,
It goes
what?
quick. It goes quick.
I mean,
You know.
so, it's just cool though to just be,
But
be in
that's got
it.
to make you feel great that they're tapping you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, come back, right? Be part of this."
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is really cool. And just being in that room with such bright minds, like people that
Yeah.
are far smarter than me. But we all have our own gifts in life. And
Well,
so,
when you say smarter, compared to what?
yeah.
What are you comparing it to?
Yeah.
Because
I might not be textbook smart, but
yeah, you got some pretty good life smarts going on.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. So broadcasting, you get out of school, broadcasting goes. You got an Emmy Award. You got the sideline shimmy. And I got to ask you about that. And I saw a clip from you. I don't know where it was, but they interviewed you. You talked about where that came from, and that you were getting nervous before games,
Yeah.
and that was kind of how you would like shake it off. But when I've watched you a ton of time on TV, and there doesn't seem like there's an ounce of nervousness anywhere. So talk about the shimmy. Talk about that and like how that helped you.
Which is so funny you say that because then sometimes in my mind I'm like, oh, it's like you can just feel this like pit inside, right? I think that sometimes my energy probably clamps down on the nervousness, maybe by design, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's crazy because it's like I could have all the confidence in the world. I know exactly what I'm going to say. We're going to talk about this player and this thing, and I feel confident. I've rehearsed in my head how I'm going to say it over and over and over. It's not usually scripted too much, but at least it's, I kind of have the bullet points in my
Yeah.
head. And then it's three, two, one, you're live. And suddenly it's like the central nervous system takes over and says
Yeah.
like, you're on live TV, and if you screw this up, Lauren, everybody's watching, you know?
Yeah.
And so that definitely required me to combat a lot of those nerves. And my therapist actually explained it to me. She said, you know, it is the central nervous system taking over. And it was like, especially like holding the microphone, everything would kind of be shaking, like right here, like in my chest and all. And I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? And so I didn't realize it at the time, but as I was dancing, like it was a form of therapy for me because it's not taking the nerves away necessarily, it's redistributing them, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of redistributing them throughout my entire body and allowing me to settle in and to loosen up. You know, it's kind of like anything you do, like if you're going to go play a sport, like playing timid is not the way to go, right? You got
No.
to loosen up and relax. It doesn't mean you lose the adrenaline and the excitement and the nervousness and the anxiousness. It just means you loosen up.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And for me, it was loosening up in a way that, you know, just it just allows me to be more free. And I will be honest with you, it brings me into the moment more because I think sometimes like you get into these game-like situations and it's like the adrenaline and the chaos and everybody's screaming and the fans and there's so much going on that in a lot of ways you almost have an out-of-body experience where like it
Yeah.
just happens and you like black out and all of a sudden the game's over and you're like, what just happened these last four
Yeah.
hours, you know? But it has brought me into the moment and helped ground me in that experience and helped me to feel all the feels. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we do our best to avoid feeling. I think we're good
Yeah.
as humans at trying to avoid. We like to
Yeah.
avoid. I don't want to feel nervous. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel the things that hurt, that suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you got to feel those things to have gratitude for the other things.
Right. And you pull people into the dance with you. You know,
Yeah.
you're pulling people on the sidelines. They're all going with you. I mean, have you
Yeah, either
trademarked
that,
that?
you either see people, you either see people I pull in with me, or you see them walking past
Oh
me
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're like, oh, I don't know about this girl.
But it's fun to watch, you know. And I mean, I'm going to guess you have a following, you know, of fans that they see you go from game to game, and
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
you know,
crazy because I actually was just speaking at an event earlier this week, believe it or not. And as I was about to pull out, I was about to pull out, and the security officer there at the building like kind of flagged me down and tapped on my window and I rolled it down. He said, "Hey," he's like, I heard you were here. You're a sports reporter, right? You work for ESPN." He's like, you dance on the sidelines, right? That's
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
see you and I love that." You know, and so it's funny because I mean, sometimes people say, "Well, where do I know you from?" And you know, I kind of let them, you know,
yeah,
figure it out on their own. But that other layer of like, oh, you're the dancing sideline reporter. It's like, you know what? Some people call it silly. Some people think it's a ploy to get,
yeah,
you know, likes and views and all the things. And truth be told, really, it's just who I am. And
yeah.
it's just a way to ground me and to bring me back to the moment, to alleviate the anxiousness and the nerves and to bring joy, you know. And I don't claim to be a good dancer. Like, if anything, probably dancing like an idiot probably
But you know,
is more
you pull
charming
people,
for people.
yeah. But you pull people in, and that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Pull, and it helps you alleviate the nerves, and helps you, and then pulls other people into the moment,
Yeah.
right? But did you trademark sideline shimmy yet, or no?
Well, I trademarked "Fall in Love with Your Story," but I probably need to look into trademarking "Sideline Shimmy." It
Yeah,
might
because
be worth looking
I
into.
mean, you own that. That's you.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody else taking it,
Yeah. That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah.
So Shatterproof. It's an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The motivation behind it. How did that start? You know, when did it start? And I remember seeing your video of when the book came in, and you did the video of the reveal of the book, which was really cool. So talk about that process.
Yeah, it's interesting with the book. Because there's so many layers to it, right? It's digging deep. It's figuring out the layout, you know, the chapters. How is this going to read? You know, I have to obviously, you know, praise the team that I worked with. My co-writer Holland Webb, phenomenal journalist, phenomenal author, phenomenal writer. And I can say this, you know, had I have sat down, put pen to paper, and tried to write this book by myself, I think he'd have been like on the surface. We got in the weeds big time and we needed to, right? And so it was one of those things where like we got to get in there and without having Holland there to like press in and press in and press in, I don't think we would have gotten the book and the product that we ended up getting when all was said and done. And so
Yeah.
that was huge for me. But when it comes to the idea behind Shatterproof, and I actually posted about this a couple months ago or about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I was in Chicago for a speaking event. And oh, by the way, a dear friend that kind of jumped into this book process, probably signed up for, didn't know what he was signing up for. Gary Schneeberger, um, bless his heart, offered to help with, some PR services and additionally with different elements of the book and,
Yeah.
just kind of using his expertise. And he really is the founding father of the title because we went back and forth and people don't realize like there's so many elements to a book. Like, there's so many things that have to be accomplished. I was like, I usually always have a book sitting here, but I know I have it over here. But there's so many elements to it, right? Like just the layout and the theme and what's it going to look like and the cover and the title and this and that and the other. Well, the title's one of the hardest things that we had to walk through, like coming up
Yeah.
with a title.
It's a great title.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great title.
I was like, I don't know where this is going to go, but he said shatterproof. And this is why. He said, because someone takes a baseball bat to your life and shatters it into a million pieces. But through the human spirit, through resilience, you have shown and proven to people that you can pick up the pieces and still create a life of joy and resilience,
Yeah.
even through all the cracks.
Yeah.
And I think that was like, okay, that's it. And that's really become the foundation for my brand, for the work that I do when I go speak and just pour into other people. Becoming shatterproof has really become my, mantra and showing people how they too can become shatterproof. And that idea is not about never breaking. It's about what do you do with the pieces when you do break?
Yeah. Putting them back together, and I can't, I can't imagine because I've seen again videos of you talking in front of large groups, you talk about your book, and I sometimes, you're up there, it's an emotional conversation. You're doing it over and over and over and over again. I'm sure it doesn't get any less emotional. But how do you feel after you give a keynote and you talk about the book, you talk about your life, you talk about the happenings, and you talk about where you are now? Is that just like an emotional roller coaster when you're doing that?
Yeah. It's definitely an emotional roller coaster because I'll tell you this, like, um, I think that it's never lost on me, like what I'm up there sharing and why I'm sharing it. Like it's never lost on me. But I think that I've really started to, again, instead of hiding from the emotions, like just like a football game, I go out there, I perform, I'm on this adrenaline high, and then I'm wired. I've got to go
Yeah.
back to the hotel, get some sleep, get on a plane, wake up at 3 a.m. to get to the airport on a flight by 5 a.m. So like I'm running wide open on little sleep. Um, but there's this like adrenaline high and then there's this crash.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that same thing happens to me after a speaking event because it's this excitement. I go out there, I perform, but like truly performing from like the depths of my heart. Like I'm reliving that experience. Even in 45 minutes, I'm giving
Everything.
everything I've got to 45
Yeah.
minutes
Yeah.
to share a message that I hope will resonate with people. And that means going backwards and digging into some of the most challenging, darkest chapters of my life. And even though I'm
Yeah.
only able to give them a snippet because of time, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that of like, hey Lauren, it's okay. Like you probably need to buffer in a little bit of time to go relax,
Yeah.
to sit in your room and just take a pause. Cause I'm always next thing. What's up?
Yeah.
Next up,
Yeah.
right? And it's like slow down. I even found myself doing that. I was in California for a speaking event a couple weeks ago, and um, the hotel was a beautiful hotel over in Newport Beach, just 2 blocks from the actual boardwalk by the beach. And as soon as we were done with the speaking event, like I rented a bike and went over to the boardwalk and just literally drove up and down that boardwalk for
Yeah.
hours. And it was just great. I put on a little music in my ear and just, wasn't with anybody, wasn't on a phone call, wasn't answering emails, was literally just in the moment, watching people, watching life.
Yeah.
And
And you're unwinding, right?
yeah. And I don't think I allow myself to do that. I don't think a lot of us do that. It's all right, got to get on a plane, got to get home, rinse and
Yeah.
repeat, next steps, next thing,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
so
the
it's
world you're
important.
you're living in between college football, which is go, go, go. And then like how many keynotes are you doing now? Do you do a couple a month, 10 a month? Like how many do you do a month now?
Last year I did 74.
No way.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? On top of
Way.
all the college sports games and the craziness.
Uh,
How do you do it?
I don't know. Don't ask. I don't even know. Yeah, 74. I have kind of like my running document of speaking events.
How many you got for this year?
Starting to add up. It's crazy because it'll start out, I don't want to say slow because I've already done several, but it'll start out kind of at a certain level and then all of a sudden, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh. Like what happened to my calendar?" Because right now I feel like my calendar's fairly open and I'm like, "Ah, I can breathe. I can breathe," right? And then I'm like literally looking at it right now and I'm like, and all of a sudden it starts to just add up. And
Yeah.
again, I have to be mindful of those things and say, all right, like slow down. And I think that because I never want to say it's quantity over or quality over quantity, because I think every event is quality and has its own place.
Yep.
Whether that's a small boardroom or a big event. I was just down talking to the SEC athletes, part of their SAC committee, their leadership council, in a boardroom of about 32 student athletes. And like, that was awesome. Like, I loved being in that room with those
Yeah.
kids, pouring into them, conversating, sharing some words of wisdom and encouragement, like just important notes about life.
Yeah.
Uh, so those opportunities are just, huge. And I'm so grateful for them. So it is, though, finding that balance because it's
Yeah.
hard to get on a plane and fly halfway across the country and be away from my family for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
It does take its toll. There is a value proposition there that I have to take in mind because
Sure.
the more I say yes to one thing, the more I'm saying no to my family.
Yeah.
So, it is there is a balance and it's
Yeah.
finding that balance and I'm definitely still figuring that out.
Well, here's a question maybe you don't want to answer then is if somebody's hearing this and hey, I want to have her as come to my company, my school, my group to speak to us, well, how do they get a hold of you?
Sign me up, baby. No, it's interesting. So I have my website and everything comes to me. So there's a form on there that people can fill out with a little bit of details about the event. But yeah, laurensisler.com. There's, opportunities. You can also sign up for my newsletter there. Follow me on social media. But yeah, that's usually the best way to get in touch with me because it's go right to my inbox. And then usually I just reach out and have a conversation, a discovery call, figure out if it's a good fit, and then we go from there. So
Right.
um,
Now,
you know,
what's
it's
not a good fit?
ooh, what's not a good fit? I think obviously timing. The first thing is like they
Yeah.
throw out a date and I'm like, well, this isn't gonna work. People
Yeah.
always think too, like, oh, I can't book her in the fall, which is not true. I can do stuff in the fall during football season, but it's usually kind of a Sunday through Thursday kind of thing. Like Friday and
Yeah.
Saturday is kind of off limits. Like
Yeah.
that's my travel day. That's my gotta get there and do football stuff. So
Yeah.
but um yeah, I mean, I don't think there is I don't say no to a lot of things, but again, it has to make sense
Yeah.
obviously with the travel and
Sure.
the cost associated with it and everything else and how much time it's going to take and that sort of thing. But I think what I've loved is that I've been in a lot of arenas and not necessarily actual arenas, but worked with different organizations. Like I've done a lot of like health and safety conferences, right? I've been in a lot of different blue collar workforce conferences with various organizations.
Yeah.
It's been great. And you kind of ask yourself, well, what does your story and message have to do with that? And I think it all comes back to, of course we talk about resilience, but we talk about shame. And then it's ultimately falling in love with our story because in order to be good at what we do, In the professional world, we have to also take care of ourselves and be good
Yeah.
at life at home. Because
Yeah.
as much as you'd love to say, like, don't let the two bleed together, that's impossible.
Yeah.
And so, in order to show up and be present, in everyday life, you've got to be able to show up and be present for yourself, for your family, before you'll ever be able to show up and be really good at your job and be good at your role
Yeah.
in the workforce.
Well, if you don't have a good support at home, this stuff doesn't happen,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They come together, which is great. Now, what's the best place to order your book? Is it through your website, through Amazon?
Yeah, you can go. Website obviously has the links there. Amazon, most people love going to Amazon just because there's the options there, hardcover, paperback,
Yep.
audio version that I narrated and tracked myself.
Okay.
So people always enjoy
How
that.
was that? Was that hard to do?
It was. I sat in a podcast studio for 2 8-hour sessions, pretty much by myself. It was like my throat felt like it was bleeding after I was done. It was hard, but it was emotional because I'll tell you this, writing the book was one thing. I saw the words on paper, read it 1,010 times. Okay. But then when it came to like speaking it
Yeah.
out loud, woo,
It's got to be hard.
it hit different,
Yeah.
especially the opening scene, like mm, it hit different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm ordering the book myself. I got to read it, and
Oh,
I can't wait. Like just talking to you is awesome. And
you're awesome, Jeff. Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. And reading the book is going to really shed light on everything, and like we can talk for an hour. We're going to wrap up in a second. And it's just a high level overview, but I can only imagine the details that are in the book,
Yeah.
and the emotion that's in the book and the value that's in the book and what people can get from it to help them personally.
Yeah. And I think that, that's one thing that I'm very grateful for is because when I do go speak at an event, there's always a million questions. People have a lot
Yeah.
of questions,
Yeah.
and I'm like, 45 minutes to an hour, I can't,
No.
I simply just can't get to all of them. But the book really outlines a lot of those things. It really is a key place where what I love is, yes, it's a memoir, it is my life story, but
Yeah.
it's intended to meet people where they're at and find
Yeah.
themselves in my story. And I think that, that's one thing people have shared with me is that, they feel seen and they feel like a piece of my story is also a piece of their story and that they, are able to lean into some of the things that I shared through that helps them to
Yeah.
maybe unlock some of the
Yeah.
challenges and things that they've walked through as well.
It's they can relate to it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
So you've impacted a ton of people, right? You know, as a journalist, as a broadcaster, a speaker, an author, a mother, a wife, right? There's something we can make this laundry list. There's gonna come a time, Lauren, when somebody says, Lauren Sisler, I remember her. She was what? How do you want people to remember you when that time comes?
Mm. I want people to remember me for just having a love for life, for being here, for being present, for loving others really well, and just showing up with joy because I think that is, in essence, like this life, what I've walked through, like this is not textbook, dude. Like this is not textbook. This is like lived experience. And to be able to like find myself sharing that with other people is, special to me. But it took a lot of courage and I wasn't always this way. Believe it or not, as the bubbly, energetic person that I am, I wasn't always this vulnerable and this open and transparent. But I want people to see that once again through the cracks in life, it's not proof of weakness. It's proof of showing up, proof of living, proof of fighting, and proof that you're still fighting. And I
Yeah,
think that's where I want to show people like through the good and the hard I want to show them proof of life and proof that life has been lived and has been loved well.
Well,
That's it.
it sounds like the last page of your book, right? And that was good.
Maybe there's another book in me.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. So Lauren, we covered a lot of stuff. We talked about college, we talked about coming out of college, we talked about broadcasting, we talked about the sideline shimmy, we talked about your book. We talked about so many aspects, and like I said, there's just so much we could talk about in an hour. Is there anything we haven't touched on you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
And I don't know, we did cover a lot of bases. I
Yeah.
I, I love the depths of some of our topics that we talked about, gymnastics and walking through those things. I think the one thing that I'd love to just encourage people. I kind of have these two mantras that I live by: fall in love with your story and be where your feet
Mm,
are. And to be where your feet are, I think is just so important because in life, being present is so important, and it's not about perfection, it's about presence. And so, I would just encourage people to, coaches say it all the time. I heard it first from Nick Saban. It's a big, part of how I try to live my life now is just being present, being in the moment,
yeah.
and just not, again, we talk about running. Don't try to outrun the things that scare you. Don't try to run towards that next promotion. Like, slow down and give this moment everything you've got.
Mm,
And it takes time. It takes a lot of patience. It takes like a dedicated effort to do that.
yeah.
But when you do, you just start to realize, like, man, like what a gift. What a
Yeah.
gift this is. And so that would be just my encouragement to those listening today. And again, thank you for your positivity and all your encouragement. I'm so glad that we were able to do this.
Yeah. I'm really happy to have you on, and I appreciate your time. Your story is it's truly amazing, and I get to watch you from the couch, on yeah, during the games and through social media and see the all the impact that you're making across the country. It's not just like one town here or there. You're touching the country, which is true. It's truly amazing.
I
But
appreciate that.
thanks for being on, and I can't wait to see your next uh, sideline shimmy.
Let's go. You want to give me one before we go? Come
Who,
on now.
me? I'll
Yeah.
do it. There you go.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. That's great.
I love it.
Well, Lauren, thanks for being on. And I always end the show by saying, hey, stay strong.
Appreciate you.